What's happening, folks? NaptownBorn. It's been too long and I didn't do any prediction videos for the fights last weekend. That's okay. I'm going to do some post fights. It's going to be brief and I'm going to try and recap the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fights I have in mind. Don't worry, some of them will be brief. First of all, I'm going to start off with the 2 fights that surprised me, and I picked the loser. First and foremost, the most surprising to me was Ricky Burns completely outclassed Michael Katsides. I thought Katsides' power was going to be a huge factor in this fight. I thought his pressure was going to be a huge factor in this fight, but watching the fight, Burns used all of that against him and looked good doing it. Ricky Burns thoroughly outboxed Michael Katsides from the opening bell to the final bell. Outboxed and outmaneuvered Katsides. I mean, to me, Ricky Burns just put a stamp on Michael Katsides that says gatekeeper now. After he fought Burns and then got so, I mean, this is like a thorough decision. Like, he completely outboxed Katsides, like completely. And even though I'm saying that now Katsides is probably more like a gatekeeper than anything else, it still impresses me. Ricky Burns impressed me in that fight. That was just something I had not expected to see. I know I've seen Katsides get outboxed numerous times, but I didn't think Burns was going to be able to do it like, let's say, Guerrero did. But Burns came to fight and owned Katsides, and for that was the biggest surprise of the night for me. So much props to Ricky Burns, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what he can do at 135. The next fight that surprised the shit out of me, Angulo versus Kirkland. Now, I'm hearing a lot of this, you know, great fight, awesome fight, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, guys. I was impressed by Kirkland. Let's put it that way. Kirkland showed up to fight. He showed great improvement from his knockout loss to now. He took shots well. He got up from a knockdown, came back to dominate. He pulverized without fear after that knockdown. He wasn't tentative or nothing. He still took a couple shots after that and just looked great doing it. So much props to Kirkland. Even as shitty as Angulo looked, I did not expect Kirkland to perform that well. So it was a nice comeback statement for Kirkland, but in my opinion, he still has a lot to prove, but he also looks better to me. In my opinion, Kirkland looks a lot better than he did when he got knocked out. Of course, it looks better to knock someone out than to get knocked out, but I think you guys know what I'm saying. The downside to this is Angulo really did look fucking horrible. I mean, dude looked fucking horrible. After the first round, you can say he's punched out or whatever, but all those rounds he had to try and catch his breath. I know Kirkland was dropping body shots, and you can say, you know, after that Kirkland just took over and didn't allow Angulo any breathing room, but I don't know. Something stank to me about Angulo in that fight. Not something like fishy or crooked, but just he looked horrible. Like completely horrible. Very sluggish after the first round. I don't know. He just wasn't there after the first round. I know he could have got rocked and maybe never recovered, but there was a lot of rounds in that fight, and he just looked like shit. So I got to weigh it out and say that even as shitty, like I said, even as shitty as Angulo looked, because he did look like shit, I'm sorry. I want to be able to like jump on the Kirkland train and just ride it out of town, you know what I mean? But I got to look at it and kind of be logical about it. Angulo looked like shit. Kirkland looked impressive. Let's see what he has next. That's all I'm saying. All right, now here I'm going to do a lot of reading, I think, because the way the next fight I'm going to talk about turned out wasn't really surprising to me. I've already went through the only 2 fights of this weekend that were a surprise to me. So now we're getting into stuff that probably a lot of us already saw coming. Now, I was without internet for like a week, so people made post-fight video. There was no way I was going to catch up with all that shit. So I haven't been able to check out anybody else's shit. Not really, not yet. There was just too many fucking videos. Anyway, for me, I don't know how you guys feel about it, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know how you guys feel about how Butte performed against Johnson. To me, Butte simply outperformed an old Johnson. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Glenn looked, also going with the Angulo thing, Glenn also looked sluggish and completely unwilling to engage and pressure like he usually does. Even when Glenn gets hit, you still see pressures. There was his left hook was non-existent. His body shots almost non-existent. I mean, even if Glenn gets hurt, he still throws back. I saw that in the Cloud fight. And there's not really any way I think anybody's going to convince me that Butte has a significantly more power than Tavoris Cloud. I just don't see it. And to me, this is one of those things where what I'm going to say is not going to be received well by Butte fans. But I have to say it because, I mean, look, dude. I mean, Butte, what can I say? He continues to look good against mediocre opposition, and then comes along Glenn Johnson, and I'm getting excited because, all right, look, Butte's going to look good against a really good fighter now, and he did, but he just, it's not Butte's fault, but Glenn Johnson really didn't look like Glenn Johnson in that fight, and so I can't take away much from the fight, except that it would have impressed me more if Butte would have got a KO or a TKO, but, you know, Glenn just wasn't there, folks. I'm sorry. I can't be all congratulatory of Butte. I can be some. Look, Glenn, and no matter what form that we're talking about Glenn, is always going to be a dangerous fighter, is going to be a good fighter, you know, no matter what. But he is fucking old, and his style, unlike Bernard Hopkins, Glenn Johnson's style does not lend to very good longevity in the sport. He's gone as far as he can go, folks. And I'm sorry, I wish I could be an uber fanboy of Butte and just tout this victory around on a fucking picket sign, scream and shout about how awesome Lucien Butte is, but I gotta see more. I gotta see more. There's still unanswered questions for me about whether or not I'm supposed to actually believe that he's as good as Ward or Froch when comparing resumes and using the eye test. He looks outstanding against moderate opposition, and even against Glenn Johnson, he looked good. But against the Glenn Johnson that was that sluggish, throwing that few of punches, Butte, in my opinion, could have done more. And because he didn't, I just can't walk away from this all thumbs up. I looked at that fight, and I looked at that fight. I watched it 3 times, and all I can say is I think Mikkel Kessler would have gave Butte a far harder time than Glenn Johnson did. I think Butte-Kessler fight would have been a great fight looking at that fight because Butte stood right in front of him. If he did that shit to Kessler, Kessler would have hit him. You understand what I'm saying? Whereas Johnson just didn't do much, didn't throw much, and just did not look like himself. But congratulations to Butte for getting a good victory over a good opponent. Let's see what happens next. All right. Okay. George Groves KOs Paul Smith. All right. You know, I like the fact that it seems to be Groves is trying to grow into his own style, get away from being one-dimensional, and have different plans, different thoughts, and different ways to approach a fight. He's learned to be cagey, and he showed in the Smith fight that if it doesn't necessarily go his way, he can make that power count when it matters. He didn't look that great in the first round. He looked okay. They looked tit for tat, feeling each other out. Then Groves got hurt. But Groves recovered, came back the next round, and blasted Smith out of the fucking water, buddy. I mean, well, not really. Once he caught the shot, he followed up on it, and he finished. That's what George Groves showed. This is another fight. Look, it was a weekend of great fights. I mean, just a great weekend of boxing, but I can't be completely positive about everything. And George Groves, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I didn't really learn anything about Groves in this fight, except that he really does have a really good fucking punch that I really didn't see that kind of power against DeGale. I didn't see him try to bring it, because I think when their game plan was with the DeGale is that if they relied on their power too much, the DeGale was going to use it against him and beat him, which is likely what would have happened. Instead, he just boxed, turned into a bit of a counterpuncher, hit and run type a little bit. Not running, I wouldn't consider that running, but he was hit and not get hit in that fight, and that's what won him the fight. This fight, he got hurt, felt he had to come back, and came back and got the knockout. I really don't know the significance because I don't know much about Smith. I was watching Lynchy Boy and talking about, you know, DeGale knocked Smith out in, what, 6-7 rounds, and then Groves does it in 2. But what did we really learn about Groves? Has he grown since the DeGale fight? Not really, not much. I can't really say. It was only 2 rounds, not even a full 2 at that. Now, as far as the Groves-DeGale comparison goes, in my opinion, they're still relatively at the same level, which is to say they're not ready to be world beaters. They're not ready to pretend like they are ready for that top-tier level of competitions. Now, they're still fairly young in their careers, so I'm not going to harp on that too much. That's not really something I'm going to harp about it as far. I'm not going to get on these guys for what they're doing right now. They're building their careers, and what they both have to me is potential. George Groves, good potential, but what I really want to see is I want to see all those different looks, the different looks like pre-DeGale, then the DeGale fight, and the Smith fight. I want to see all those looks kind of put together in a single sound, complete package. And I know that takes work, but he doesn't really seem it's going to be like one thing or the other. If he could just mix that stuff up, all the stuff that he already has, the way he approaches fights, his punches, whether he's countering, being a counterpuncher, being on his toes a bit, or planting his feet and really knocking into guys, if he could put all that together in a complete package, that's a dangerous dude. But I'm not sure if he's going to progress into that. It looks to me like they're going to progress him in one certain way and take him from one dimension and put it in another dimension instead of taking that one dimension and growing off of it and having, you know, a wider array of tools. They're just going to focus on certain things. I think maybe they both could look into new trainers, especially Groves right now. It's not that I know much about trainers, because I don't. I know there's some Hatman and Lynchy Boy specifically who said something about, what is his name, Booth, and how he might not be the right trainer. I don't know much about trainers. I don't know shit about Booth, so I'm going to avoid that particular, you know, specific shit and just say maybe new training tactics, maybe bring it all together. It's really want to see is all these, like I said, pre-DeGale, DeGale, and then post-DeGale. They're kind of different looks, and if he could mesh it all together into one good package, then, like I said, next time he meets up with DeGale, he may win more soundly. course, DeGale might have won the first fight, but I'm not going to argue the point. It was a good, close fight. Anyway, moving on. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly is Peter Quillen TKOs McEwen. Don't jump my shit quite yet. Look, Quillen looked good in the fight leading up to this stoppage. I'm not arguing that. He looked like he was handling McEwen. It looked like the knockout was either inevitable or McEwen was going to go into survival mode and just survive to the last. But this stoppage was really early, folks. Really, really early. Like I said, Quillen may have been winning. Quillen was looking good, but I don't agree with the stoppage, and that kind of puts a mar on it. I can't really walk away talking about how great of a knockout it was, can I? Because it was a really short, crappy stoppage, and that was just a way too early stoppage for me to give much credit in that fight. But Quillen looked good enough and piqued my interest enough that, again, I want to see him again. You know, just because the ref did something that I disagree with doesn't mean I shit on the fighter, you know, who benefited from it. Quillen looked good. It didn't look like he was in any danger of losing. And for him, that's a nice step. That's a nice way for him to go about this. Now, the best fucking thing of the whole weekend for me was the 2 rounds of, what was his name? Was it Pierre Cote? I can't remember if it's Pierre or, I can't really remember. Oliver, fuck, I don't know. Cote. The 2 rounds was fucking, he fucking, just, what was that guy's name? I don't even remember that guy's name. Joran, ah, fucking whatever. The fucking knockout, it was bloody, it was brutal, and it was entertaining. Outstanding. Gotta love that. And finally, on Friday night, I think it was Friday, Ismail Silak made a bum quit. Now, after coming on here and making that video I did about the light heavyweights and talking about how I thought he was the most skilled, and I really think Silak has a lot of potential to bring to this light heavyweight division, that was not the kind of fight I wanted to see. I know he's still young-ish in his career, but he is not youngish himself. He's like 26. This is the time to step it up and fight, you know, the real deals. And, you know, he makes a bum quit, and I'm kind of looking at it like, so what? I'm really not impressed with the fight. He needs better competition. Yes, right now in his career, he needs better competition. I'm sorry, but that kind of shit is not going to float. I know stay busy fights are stay busy fights, but stay busy fights should still be more competitive than that bullshit. All right, folks. Well, that's my weekend recap. So take it how you will. I'm not I'm not here to make everybody happy, but that's how I felt about the fights. Let me know what you think. Deuces.